Okay, so let's unpack this idea that's been rattling around in my head since a flight I took recently. It's about authority, really.
Oh, yeah. What about it?
Well, this person I was sitting next to asked this really interesting question. Does authority come from being absolutely certain? Or maybe does it come from being okay with, uncertainty?
That's a great question, especially relevant for what we're looking at today.
Exactly. It just clicked when I was thinking about our sources, particularly Rajiv Mudgal's The Loom of Time.
Right, because that whole question of authority, certainty, uncertainty, it really echoes through all the material we've got here, doesn't it?
It does. And we've got quite a mix. The novel, of course, but also poetry, some philosophy, personal stories.
Yeah, it's a real tapestry of stuff.
Absolutely. And that's kind of our mission for this deep dive, yeah. We want to explore how all these things, history, individual lives, beliefs, the search for meaning, how they're all tangled up together.
Like teasing apart the threads of some complex fabric.
Precisely. To see the patterns underneath.
So a good place to start has to be that central metaphor in Mudgal's novel, right? The loom of time.
Yes. Can you paint a picture of that for us?
Okay, so imagine this ancient machine somewhere in Moscow. It's like a mix between an old printing press and a massive weaving loom.
Okay.
And it's constantly working, weaving the actual fabric of human history, past, present, future, all of it, into this incredibly complicated tapestry.
Wow. So history isn't static, it's actively being woven.
That's the idea. It's dynamic, shaped by what we all think and do. Every thread matters, has consequences.
And crucially, it's not like the pattern is fixed, right? It
Yeah.
can be changed.
Exactly. The elder character who shows it explains that our collective thoughts and actions influence it. With wisdom, with courage, you can actually alter the weave.
The repercussions, big ones.
Significant repercussions, yeah. Which brings us right back to that question on the plane,
How so?
Well, this idea that truth isn't always obvious, that it might be hidden, kind of concealed.
Ah, right. That mirrors the protagonist's journey. He has to learn to read the loom, maybe even influence it. He can't just take it at face value.
No, he has to dig deeper. And it's not an easy path for him. As he learns, he sees both incredible suffering and real kindness woven into everything.
The book doesn't pull punches on the dark stuff.
Not at all. It shows the harsh realities, both historical and personal.
And Mudgal's writing style. It's quite fragmented, isn't it?
Very. And the narrator's identity is kept a bit mysterious. There are hints it might be someone called Vaman, but it's never explicit.
Why do that, do you think?
Well, it definitely adds to the mystery, the enigma.
Right.
It makes us, the readers, and you, the listener, have to work a bit, piece things together.
Back to that uncertainty idea again. No easy answers.
Exactly. And tying this to the setting, the novel starts in Moscow, and right away, there's this clash.
The clash between expectation and reality.
Precisely. The protagonist arrives thinking about the Soviet utopia, all the promises.
But finds something very different on the ground.
Yeah. That visit to the kolkhoz, the collective farm, it's a stark illustration.
Instead of prosperity, he sees. What?
Just hardship. Farmers working incredibly hard, looking gaunt, ribs showing, the food is meager. Things like meat and tea were rationed. It's a world away from the ideal.
It shows how even well-meaning ideas can go wrong. Terribly wrong.
And the personal stories really drive that home, like Larina's story.
Oh, that's devastating. Her father.
Persecuted just for voicing complaints about the system. The details are horrific, beaten, executed.
And the way her mother and sisters were treated afterwards? Appalling.
It's chilling. And then there's that folk song she mentions, Nochta o Nochta.
Well, lament, right, for lost hope.
Yeah, it captures the despair of that time so powerfully.
Larina doesn't just focus on her own tragedy, though. She has broader points.
Right. She strongly believes you need a second political party to prevent totalitarianism.
A check on power.
Exactly. And she observes how the system stifles talent, how the brilliance seems to drain away from the countryside. It's a profound loss.
So the book moves from these political and social realities into deeper philosophical territory, too.
It does. There's this fascinating dialogue about the nature of reality itself, space and time being illusions, maybe?
And the limits of our understanding.
Yes, exactly. There's this great metaphor, a cloud trying to understand the whole sky.
Suggesting our intellect can only grasp so much.
Pretty much, especially when it comes to concepts like Atman, the true self in Indian thought. It's something beyond our usual perception, maybe even indescribable.
So a call for humility in our search for knowledge.
I think so, recognizing limits. And interestingly, this part also dismisses occult stuff aimed at control.
suggesting a difference between genuine seeking and just trying to manipulate things.
Seems like it. It fits with that theme of questioning authority and easy answers.
And then there are poems woven in by Chopin. Here comes fire, here comes lightning.
Yeah, powerful stuff. How do you see those fitting in?
Well, they feel elemental, almost primal, full of this raw energy, destruction, but also rebirth. It kind of mirrors the big forces shaping history and lives in the novel, that constant cycle of change.
That cyclical idea comes up again later, doesn't it, in the cafe scene?
Right, with the narrator and Kanak. They talk about time, change, how life takes us in circles.
Which loops right back to the loom metaphor.
It does. And that simple question, do you remember? How it just cracks open the past.
Shows how much our personal history stays with us, shapes us now.
They also critique modern education, don't they?
Yeah, calling it a grinding mill of material education.
Ouch. Meaning
We've lost the value of learning just for inspiration, for understanding. It's all about careers now.
That's a critique you still hear today.
For sure. And the narrator's disillusionment doesn't stop there. It touches spiritual figures too, like Jiddu Krishnamurti.
What happens there?
After hearing him speak, the narrator starts to question him. Where are these words really coming from? There's this flicker of doubt.
So another authority figure being questioned.
Exactly. And it seems part of a pattern for the narrator, this drifting away from intellectual things, from relationships too. Like he's searching, but never quite finding satisfaction.
And the book places this in a bigger context, with the time of the master.
Right. It references Nietzsche, God is Dead, and the rise of Marxism, big shifts challenging old authorities, reframing society through economics. Krishnamurti's ideas emerged in that turbulent intellectual climate.
Okay, let's shift to the more personal stories. Vaman and Megha.
Ah, yes, their love affair. It highlights social pressures, doesn't it? The age gap was an issue for people.
In his career complicated things.
Yeah, his writing takes off, but it actually puts a strain on the relationship. She ends up leaving.
And that loss stays with him.
Deeply. It shows how personal ambition and connection can clash.
He also writes those satirical bits, right? With Adam Smith and Marx.
Yes, those imagined conversations. They're funny, but also quite sharp critiques of economic theories, the whole idea of progress.
But despite his success as a writer, tragedy hits him hard.
Losing his parents, yeah. It leads him to become quite reclusive. Again, it shows that connection between the personal and the bigger picture and just the weight of grief. Then there's that really surreal bit with Yuri, the cosmonaut.
Oh, mama, I have lost your moon. It's so strange and poignant. His thoughts about his mother, the moon.
And it leads to this urgent message. The loom of time is malfunctioning.
Right. Things are going wrong with the weave. Why?
The book suggests it's because of conflict, misinformation, fear, all these disruptive forces messing up the narrative of the world.
So it needs mending.
Exactly. It requires effort to weave back in truth, hope, understanding, to restore harmony.
And it's not a one-time fix.
No. The implication is that mending the world's fabric is constant work, an ongoing process.
Okay, then we jump to the boatman. Another really strange narrative. Lu Xun.
Yeah, the famous Chinese writer, journeying in the afterlife. He's ferried across this misty river by a boatman.
And the boatman challenges him.
He does. Asks him about Ibsen's Nora, questions his ideas about revolution, identity.
And he tells him a story, a fable.
A brutal one, about a tyrant whose rule leads to absolute disaster, seizing farms, famine, forced industrialization, crushing dissent, even cannibalism.
Wow. Stark warnings about power.
Absolutely. And it mentions Lao Shi, another writer persecuted in reality, grounding the fable in historical tragedy.
But there's a shift for Lu Xun at the end.
Yes. After witnessing a woman giving birth, he seems to undergo some kind of transformation, a rebirth. A glimmer of hope, maybe?
Then there's Bansi's story. Loss again, but maybe redemption.
Definitely. He loses his whole family in a flood that started with rain they were happy about. Such a cruel twist.
And he just wanders after that.
Yeah, lost. Then he finds a connection with Letta, but she struggles with madness. More tragedy follows. He nearly drowns.
But he's rescued.
By Mother Radha, yeah. And through healing, he rediscovers his gift as a minstrel.
Using music to process the grief.
Exactly. Honoring his lost family, bringing comfort to others through his stories. It's about resilience, finding purpose after devastation.
Mahapantra's story takes us into the supernatural, right?
It does. He can see and interact with spirits from a young age. He has this concept of teho.
Teho, what's that?
Like a spiritual energy. He believes it can enter the body, especially through negative words, and cause illness.
So words have real power, potentially harmful power.
In his view, yes. And his healing methods are a mix of herbs, meditation, even black magic.
But he's not all-powerful. There's that sad story.
The old man and the child, yeah. It shows the impossible choices he sometimes faced, the limits even of his abilities. It's heartbreaking.
And Vishnu's story.
Yeah.
Another layer of loss.
Yes, told by Suman. Vishnu loses his love, Suman, due to a misunderstanding.
And then loses himself.
Pretty much. He's found injured, having lost his voice, his memory. Suman becomes the keeper of his lost story. It's about silence, memory, how much can be lost through misunderstanding.
Okay, fast forward to the temple scene, seduction. We have Bansi, Durga, Ojha, Vishnu.
And then this lame man, Langda, shows up.
And shakes things up.
Big time. He challenges their life, their poverty, questions why they're content with so little. Then he offers them a way out.
To the city, to make money.
Exactly. And Ojha, the potter, he starts getting interested, thinking about security for his old age, wanting his own kiln.
So Langda represents temptation, the lure of something different, maybe something materialistic.
You could see it that way. He makes it sound easy, points out how little Bansi and Durga actually have. It's very persuasive.
The poems at the end seem to tie a lot of this together.
They really do. They reflect on those journeys through time, like Lucen Vamens, the idea of shifting identities, form and name being fluid.
And that interconnectedness. I am you and you are me.
Yes, and finding the light within you are the light. They echo those big themes. Questioning, seeking, cycles, underlying unity. Beautiful summaries, really.
Let's circle back to the narrator and Aruni. Their ending is quite abrupt.
It is. After all those conversations, her sharp critique of his pessimism about humanity, their tender moments, talk about memory.
She gets this big opportunity abroad.
Right, and he encourages her to go, even though they're both sad about separating.
Within a fight.
A final disagreement, and she just leaves. Abruptly. No trace afterwards.
Leaving him with this unresolved loss.
A gag, a recurring pattern.
Then there's that memory going to see Chennai kind of place.
Yeah, Central Park. It sets a scene, maybe a bit nostalgic, but then it takes a dark turn.
The encounter in the metro station.
This deserted underground station, and this terrifying ghost-like woman appears.
He gets spooked.
Totally spooked.
Yeah.
So much so that he decides not to go back to his hotel, stays with a friend instead. It's this moment of intense, almost supernatural fear.
And it feels like a prelude to something awful.
It really does. Because the very next thing is Somu's urgent call.
To go to the morgue.
Yeah. And the shock, the horror of finding Aruni there.
Her body. Badly injured.
Terribly crushed. And the narrator's shock. Then the slow, awful recognition. Seeing her red gagra, her scarf, her bag, the pail, bangles, her diary.
Just gut-wrenching detail.
It's incredibly tragic, a brutal end to that storyline.
Years pass, and then Kanak reappears, in a way.
Right. The narrator gets a magazine with his own paper published, but with an introduction by Kanak, the person from the cafe conversation earlier.
And Kanak uses the intro to analyze Krishnamurti.
Yes, reflecting on the narrator's experiences. Kanak talks about that tension between mysticism and rationality and seeking enlightenment.
What's Kanak's main critique of Krishnamurti?
Well, Kanak suggests Krishnamurti mostly just rearranged existing Western ideas, citing Oxford and Harvard as sources.
And failed to connect with Indian traditions.
Yeah, missed the chance to engage with concepts like Atman, Brahma, Vak, Om, and crucially, failed to see how language itself shapes our understanding.
Aiming for a more anglicized spirituality, maybe?
That's Kanak's implication, overlooking the deeper meanings within Indian languages and thought.
Kanak also brings up something about violence.
A really provocative point about the complex link between being and violence. How suppressing fundamental desires, even in figures seen as saintly like Mother Teresa, and by implication, Krishnamurti might lead to a potential for brutality.
Well, that's a heavy critique. Challenging stuff.
Definitely challenges conventional views of spiritual figures and the pursuit of purity.
So, as we pull all these threads together from this really wide-ranging deep dive, what stands out?
Well, this incredible weaving, isn't it? History and individual stories constantly shaping each other.
Yeah, and the huge impact of ideologies, power structures, but also the very personal search for truth when everything feels uncertain.
The cycles of life, loss, finding meaning, losing it again, and those big persistent questions about who we are, our destiny.
It feels like all these different stories, these reflections, they don't give easy answers, but they offer insights.
Exactly. Insights into the human condition and all its complexity and contradiction, like looking closely at the threads in that loom of time.
So maybe the final thought for you listening is this. Think about the forces shaping our world right now. Technology, information, beliefs. How are they weaving the loom of our time?
And what's your role in that? What does individual understanding, empathy contribute to the pattern that's emerging?
Yeah. What's your stable, unshakable authority,
Yeah.
and what layers of concealment might still be hiding the deeper truths around you?
Definitely something to chew on.